post it too. So here we go. Okay, so it's so great to see all of you. I miss everybody when I'm not teaching. All right, so you've seen this. This is what I showed you. It's posted on Pepper. So we're going to really break it down, and I'm going to combine as well assessment and evaluation because it really makes sense. It flows together. So if you revisit this, you'll see that we've talked about backward design. That's how we plan. It's how we plan units. It's also how we plan lessons, if you think about it, because we go for the expectations first, and then how are we going to assess, etc. So here are the overall expectations that are right from the curriculum. And the reason they're overall, as opposed to, in lessons, they're specific, is because you're not teaching, in this case, social studies. You're not teaching it all the time. Generally, teachers will teach social studies and science, often in the form of a unit. And so many teachers will do social studies one term, science the next. Sometimes they do half and half, and there's nothing right or wrong. It's just the way they do it. And so that's where these have come from. And that's what we're trying to target in terms of the social studies objectives. But here we also have the integration focus. And so if you remember when we talked about this in the fall, is that you really want to try to integrate a few subjects if you can, because it helps you with timing. And so here we're integrating language arts. We've got a reading expectation, a writing expectation, and a media expectation. And then we have some arts expectations. So this unit is social studies with language and arts. All right. So what she's done is looked at the overall expectations and then decided, okay, in the context of that, I can also target some language and I can also target some arts. And so then think about now in this unit, what are some big ideas that are attached to these overall expectations that will make sense? This is not necessarily something that you have to do, but I find it focuses your attention for planning. It's really for planning. It's not necessarily what you're going to do with kids. It's just focusing your mind. And the same with the essential questions. The essential questions are helping you to plan your individual lessons. And so then going from here, I've decided as a teacher, these are the language and arts expectations that will feed into this. And that's going to make more sense in a few moments. And then in terms of backward design now, I also have to think, what are my culminating tasks that are going to show me what the students know in relationship to this and in relationship to this? So she has decided that she is going to give them, under the category of communication or communicating, she's going to have them design a poster that will attract pioneers to come and settle in Ontario. She's going to give them a test, which follows under the knowledge and application area. And then under thinking and communicating, she's going to have them write a diary. So though she has decided those are 3 culminating tasks that she's going to do. Now, it's not necessarily clear from this plan when she was planning to do it, but I'll show you how I have done it. So that's the first part. And then each day now, that's kind of my overall look at it. Right at the very beginning, before the unit starts, this is how I'm thinking. But I did select some essential questions. And so I want to check on those daily, just for, not for the kids, but just to make sure that I'm on track, that I'm not wavering off, going down a path that I hadn't intended. It's really keeping me on track. And you'll see here that it informs the assessment. And here is the assessment that she has determined will go along. And I've gone even deeper with the assessment here. So she is saying she's going to develop co-develop success criteria for the poster and for the journal. And she is going to create rubrics for each task. And then she is throughout going to provide oral and descriptive feedback as they go through the journal process. Okay, so that's the first part of this overall unit. The second part then is now she's thinking, I've got my big ideas and I know what I'm gonna teach. So here are all the resources that I need. She's got various things planned. She's paying attention to equity, diversity, and social justice connections. I'm going to say to you that if you're planning a unit during this block, hopefully you'll get it in, but I would keep it in my mind. But if you feel like this is going to take you down a path that you're not ready to go down, just leave that on the back burner. We don't want to overload you, but it is definitely something to think about. And then you also have to think, if I have any students in my class who are on an IEP, or if I have any English language learners, how am I going to adapt for them? And then am I going to have differentiated instruction strategies? But I'm going to say to you, all of you, that you already know about differentiated instruction. And we've talked about it more like a lens for how you're going to teach. So I'm going to guess that you would put in differentiated instructions anyway. You're going to use graphic organizers. You're maybe going to use computer assisted technology, et cetera. You're already really kind of familiar with that. But this would be something you might want to take note of when you're planning. So then she knows where she's going. She knows what the culminating tasks are going to be. So now what are my lessons every single day? And here's the lessons that she has developed. And I'm going to go through them in more detail. So I'm just showing you what the plan looks like. Those are the daily lessons for each day for the activities. So now I hope this makes sense because it made sense to me. We're going to see this slide again, but feel free to jump in and ask any questions that you might have. And hi to everybody who just joined us. I saw Sheridan, I saw Robbie. Who else didn't I check in with? There was a few people who came in. So hi, everybody. So over here on this side, we have the overall expectations that you saw right at the very beginning. And I've highlighted here the things that they are doing. And so in A1, they're comparing the way of life of specific groups in Canada. And so the language expectations that are going to help fulfill that expectation are the point of view and the form. So here they're identifying whose point of view it is. And so over here, we've got more than one group that we're studying. So they're identifying whose point of view. So which of these groups is the point of view? And then they're going to suggest how the text might change because if there's a different point of view. So everything I put into my language lessons are now going for this particular or specific expectation. They're also going towards the social studies expectation. So they're aligned. Everything I'm doing in my language work aligns with the social studies lesson. In A2, in this overall one here, they're using the social studies inquiry process to investigate some of the major challenges that groups faced. And so over here now, I'm aligning my lessons on language are going to be aligned with this. What I'm doing over here, which is extending the understanding of text by connecting the ideas in them. And now I'm also bringing it into my own experience. So or the kids' experience, so they can relate. And then I can align this particular media expectation as well, because they're producing media text for specific purposes and audiences. Actually, so I'm just gonna, this should go down a little bit here. Hang on. I just want to change that so it makes more sense there. sorry. All right, and so, so these two expectations here from language are really going to align up here. And then I've decided I'm also going to have the arts expectations in there. And so because they have to describe their relationship to the land and each other, I'm going to get them to do a drama to do that. So that's an arts expectation. And then down here is a visual arts expectation, because you remember she wants them to create a poster. So let's look at the culminating tasks, because I'm going to add this to that chart. So one culminating task was design a poster that will attract pioneers. One was going to be a pioneer test, so they demonstrate specific knowledge that they've been learning. And the third is to write a diary entry from an early settler's child's point of view. And they have to include, sorry, this should all be one thing. They also have to include this idea of 5 aspects of life in of the life of the pioneer child, and talking about food, clothing, and schoolwork. So you can see there's a lot of information here that she wants to get back from the students in certain ways. So I have to make sure that these tasks, culminating tasks, align with the expectations. So let's just go back to that chart with the expectation again for a second. So here, comparing the way of life in this, actually, let's go to the next. This is going to make more sense. So over here, I have aligned now the culminating tasks. So so when I'm teaching about the way of life of all of these people, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I have said I want to give them a test. So all of the teaching and learning that goes on to meet this expectation is also going to be something that's going to show up on the test. But also, I can have them take some of this information here to use in their diary. That's another culminating task. So when I align it like this, I can see, yes, my test and yes, the diary entry are going to fulfill that expectation. And then down here, probably all the information that they gather doing the learning from A2 is going to fit onto the test. So that test will align with this expectation. And then the third one, A3, they are describing the relationships to the land and each other. This is a perfect opportunity for them to fulfill the designing a poster. So I want to go over here and make sure now, are my language and my arts expectations also being met? So if I teach them about point of view, and I teach them about how the text might change from a different point of view, I'm probably going to pick that information up to know whether they understand that expectation through that diary entry. And we'll talk about it in a minute, but they would also be putting, we would also be doing success criteria. So that's all going to be part of the success criteria. Then when I look at the language arts one, I want to make sure that I'm doing something, or I'm teaching them a lesson where they're going to be able to write a short text using a variety of forms. Well, one of the things I said I was going to do was have them write a diary. So that's one of a variety of forms. So yes, that students writing a diary will fulfill that expectation. And then down here, they're investigating some major challenges of the groups. So I can actually have them talk about the challenges right here. I can have them talk about the challenges in through this diary. I can also have them talk about or learn about the challenges through extending the idea of the texts. But I'm also thinking that they're going to have a lot of learning in this particular expectation. There's going to be several lessons. There's going to be a lot of learning here. So I'm probably going to want to include a lot of that on the test that I'm ultimately going to give them. And then the last one here, where they're producing the media text for specific purposes. I want them to design a poster. So they may get the information from the poster from learning this expectation here. And then the how-to is from here. So they design a poster. I've already taught them how to do that. And down here as well, there should be another arrow to down here, the creating and presenting, because I'm going to get them to do a gallery walk in the end probably. And the third one down here, A3, so they're learning to identify the communities of Canada and describe their relationship to the land and each other. That poster that they're doing, I'm going to see from that poster that they've understood this expectation. And over here, the design of a poster, here's the specific expectation about designing a poster, and the same thing down here, design a poster. So all my expectations, the integration of it aligns, and then my culminating tasks align. And I'm making sure when I look at it this way, I'm making sure that each specific expectation has a product attached to it that I can assess and evaluate. I'm just going to do this slide and then stop it for a moment. So time frames. If you look at this overall unit plan, this teacher has said this is going to be a 4-week unit. But if you look at the individual days of lessons, she's really only got 11 days or 11 lessons. And so that makes me think she's not doing this unit every single day. She's likely doing the unit for 11 days during her social studies time. You could do it that way. And so it might be that she's got social studies twice a week, let's say. So she's doing it during that time. But you could also, because you're integrating here and you're integrating literacy, social studies, and the arts, you actually could do this unit during the, let's say the morning block of literacy starts from 9 until 10:30, and then after recess you have social studies. You could actually do it for 11 consecutive days all morning because you've got those blocks available. You could also do it just once a week. It's entirely up to you, and every teacher has a different way of doing things. So there's no right or wrong. It all depends on the timing. Sometimes it depends on the number of resources they have available, etc. So let's just stop the share there and see if there are any questions, thoughts, concerns. And hi to everybody who just joined us. Good to see you. Does it make sense? We're good? Okay, there's things in the chat here. They might just be, oh, nice. Okay, all right. So now let's look a little bit deeper. Okay, so day 1 in this unit, keeping in mind that we're doing social studies, we're doing literacy, and we're doing the arts. So on day 1, what she wants to do is a diagnostic assessment. She wants to do a KWL chart. So she's going to maybe read that story, The Ultimate Field Trip. And then she wants the kids to think about how stories and experiences of the past help us to understand our life. What do they know about settlers? And also what would they like to know? So she's going to have them fill in the K part. What do they know? And what do they want to know? So this is the way the teacher can do a diagnostic to see what they already know. If they know a lot, then I might be able to pare it back a bit. I don't need to do everything that I had in my mind. What do they want to know is really me helping them to get interested in this unit. So I want them to tell me, and then I'm going to try to put in as much of it as I can. So that's day 1, lesson 1. Then day 2, she's going to use that RAND chart. We talked about this in class, which is very similar to the KWL. It's just a little bit more in depth. And this time she's going to have a variety of literary and informational texts available. So she's going to do some read alouds. She might have books available to the students where they can go and look through the books. Maybe there's some web quests going on, but she's still doing some diagnostic assessment here and maybe even some formative assessment. So she's getting them to find out what they already, what they think they know, which is the first part. And then they're listing what they think they know, and throughout it, they can go in and check it off or write an entry to say that they confirmed what they knew. All of this on that RAND chart. Let me open this up a bit so you can see it better. And so then as they're going through, they can, or at this point in time, they can talk about their wonderings, which is what they want to know. So they can write that down. Now, if I have this in some kind of a binder or a scrapbook, I can easily go through it as they're working on this unit and see and go through it with them. Oh, you were wondering about this. Have you found that information out yet? Because when they find information out, I want them to fill in the confirmed part. And they may have, as they're going through this, they may have found something that they had a misconception about. So we can actually change that up again too, and get them to correct the misconception. And then finally at the end, I can have them write down any new information they have. So this RAND chart can be something that's ongoing. And so for today, day 2, this RAND chart is my assessment for the day. This is what I'm going to assess. And it could be that I'm just checking to see that they have it done. It doesn't have to be any marks out of 10 or anything like that. I can just be checking that they have it done. But I also want to set them up for success on this test that's coming up. And so I might say to them, okay, as we go through today, be paying attention to this information and maybe highlight the information as we're going through that's interesting to you because it might be on the test. I want to set them up for success. So that's day 2, lesson 2. Day 3, now we're moving into formative assessment. I already know what they know. I know what they want to know. Now I need to move into giving them some information, giving them the input, modeling, and demonstration. So I'm going to show them some archived posters from Upper Canada that were already used, because now I'm teaching them not only content about social studies, but I'm also giving them a model for this poster that they're going to create. And I'm also going to talk to them, teach them during this lesson. I'm probably going to give a little mini lesson on how to create a poster. I've shown them there's some content in here, social studies content in this first part, but then it's also preparing them for the actual designing of the poster in the end. So my lesson today is that, and I'm going to show them the posters, and then I'm going to actually maybe get them to start a draft of their poster. So I can give them some feedback right now on their poster. But before they sit down to work on that poster to do their draft, I'm going to sit down with them and co-create some success criteria. What are the elements of this poster that have to be available on the final copy? So I'll co-create some success criteria, and from that success criteria, we can co-create a rubric. We can go, because the rubric is going to be more in-depth than the success criteria. So I'll co-create the success criteria and the rubric, then put them to work on their poster draft, and I can go around and I can watch them, observe them. Maybe I'm taking some anecdotal notes. I might carry around a pad of stickies with me and put a little sticky note right on their poster. Here's what I'd like you to think about, or what are your next steps, etc., so that I'm constantly giving them feedback. More on that later. And then the next day, we move into exploring the diverse cultures of Upper Canada. So I'm going to do a read aloud of the Freedom Seekers, And while I'm reading that, I'm going to set them up ahead of time by telling them, pay attention to why and how people came to Canada, because this is my input, modeling, and demonstration, the freedom seekers. I'm giving them information, and I'm probably going to read a little bit and then stop and have them discuss. And then I'm going to read the Pioneer Thanksgiving. And then again, I might read a little bit and stop and have them discuss. But I want, because this is content that I'm giving them, I'm going to alert them, this is probably going to be on the test. So I've given them loads of warning, just like the day before. I'm giving them loads of warning. I'm giving them some input that the test is coming. And then I might talk about what are some things here that we could write in our diary, because I've told them all the way from the very beginning, these are the 3 things that you're going to do in the end. You're going to do the poster, you're going to do the diary, and you're going to do a test. So I've told them well in advance. So everything I do is preparing them for that culminating task. So I'm telling them, think about what we're reading and what we're discussing right now, because it could be on the test and it'll be something you can use for your diary. And so I might also say to them, while you're doing this, and this is going to get into differentiated instruction, because for some kids, keeping a mind map as we're going through this will be helpful for them. I might just include it anyway. I might want to get them to take out their RAND chart and write anything in that's new for them. Or maybe there's a misconception that has been reframed for them. So they could also use their RAND chart. They could write journal entries. They can do a little video. They can do interviews. We can add all of that into this. She doesn't say that on her plan. I'm just saying these are things that I might also include, because all of this is part of the formative assessment. I'm watching them every single day, and I'm going to give them either oral or written feedback and talk about the next steps. Okay, so that's day 4. Then in day 5, now we're going to watch a video, and I'm going to have them do a think, pair, share. They're going to talk about why they think they're, what they think the big challenges were. Now, jot notes is, that's going to be an expectation. She hasn't got that down as an expectation, but you might put that in, that's going to cover another expectation, because in day 5, we're going to do jot notes. Now, I would have to also add in time to show them how to do that if I'm going to use it as an expectation. But maybe you're just letting them do it themselves. And maybe some of them, instead of doing jot notes, maybe they're doing a mind map. It's up to you. But if you do have an expectation for jot notes, then you need to show them how to do the jot notes. Again, I'm giving them content here. I'm actually teaching a lesson using this video, and I'm going to alert them. Some of this information will be on the test. And then maybe they're doing whatever the follow-up is, the jot notes, the think, pair, share. I'm listening when they're thinking. I might be keeping track of who's talking about it, who I think's got it, who I think doesn't have it, and give them some feedback. And then day 6, we're going to Pioneer Village. How fun is this? This is a great trip, by the way. I remember going to Pioneer Village when I was in grade 3. I can still remember it. And I've taken classes there over the times I've been to Pioneer. It's a great trip. So Pioneer Village, they're going ahead of time now. I want to set them up, because when they come back, we're going to be talking about similarities and differences. So I want them to think about shelter, food, tools, etc. What's similar, what's different to our way of life, because when we come back, we're going to do something with it. While they're at Pioneer Village, though, they're going to design and create a Pioneer tool to come back with. And then I'm going to say, well, some of the stuff we learned today at Pioneer Village is going to be on the test. This is a perfect opportunity for them to do a draft of their letter, of their diary entry, because they would have learned a whole bunch of stuff that would be important in that diary entry. And they can even think about their poster here. So again, I can accompany this discussion and everything that we've done today. I can use any of these other things to help them. And I'm going to also give them feedback. Then on day 7, now this is a big day. The next 2 days are big days. So I'm going to have them, I've got books or videos, whatever available for them, because today I want them to think about comparing settler life to the present. So however I do that, my input, modeling, and demonstration has to provide them with content that they can compare men's and women's roles, boys and girls roles, and school. So all the content they need will be presented to them. And then I'm going to encourage them, because over here you see we're going to use Venn diagrams here. So if they haven't done Venn diagrams yet, I need to teach them Venn diagrams as well. Again, I'm going to tell them some of this is going to be on the test. You can use this information to write the diary and also for your poster. So this kind of point right here is kind of irrelevant because they are using a Venn diagram. But while and I might have them do this in pairs or small groups so that I can walk around, I can talk to kids, I can listen in on their conversations to make sure that they're on track and that they are actually comparing. So now I have given them a ton of stuff. I'm also going to give them some online stuff because I want them to do some independent work. So I may have some websites that I want them to visit because information that's going to be on the test is present in those websites. Maybe I have books for them to read. Maybe I'm going to send them to the library. I may have actually set up with the teacher librarian that some groups are going to come down and the teacher librarian can actually do a little bit of work with them, however that works in your school. But I'm letting them know that all the information that they have, I might also use here. I may have learning centers set up. So instead of them going out somewhere to the library, I've got all the information that they need in bins or little baggies, however I'm doing that. During COVID, well, you can't do this really when you're online, but those of you who are going face to face, you're not really going to be able to do learning centers in this way because the kids aren't going to be able to move from station to station. And if you remember, there was also the opportunity, instead of the kids moving, you're moving the bucket with all the information to the desk. You're not going to be able to do that either. This would be quite a bit of work, but doable. If you had all the different learning activities that in the unit that the kids are going to be responsible for these days, you could put them in individual baggies. It's not going to give the kids as much choice if it were non-COVID times, but at least you can use the learning center idea with that in your mind. So over these next 3 days, I'm 8, 9, and 10, I'm going to give them lots of opportunity to learn any additional material they need to know for the test, any additional material they need to know to write this diary and to design this poster. So the beauty of having these work periods is you have been thinking all along and watching the kids, how are they doing? So you're going to know kids who have fallen behind or kids who really didn't get the concept. So maybe somebody doesn't really understand how to write a diary entry. This is a perfect opportunity to put the class to independent work and you take a small group and do mini lessons or one-on-one. It's an independent work time because the kids already know that on day 11, everything has to be handed in because we're having a celebration of learning. So let's just look at what that's going to look like. Sorry, I should say that on these times, they're going to be independent most of the time. So I might also develop with them a checklist and the success criteria so they know on day 11, check, I have that done. Check, I have that done. Oh, I didn't do that, so I better make sure I get that done. So they can be independent, do their own checklist. You also want to make sure that before you set them off to work independently on these 3 days, that they've checked the rubrics for the poster and for the diary entry. so that you know. And I would be asking them, tell me what it is that you're supposed to do. Check their understanding so that they're not missing something, they're not leaving something out. And as I said, you can use this time to have mini conferences to provide any remediation that needs to happen. If you didn't have any remediation that needed to happen, then I might just be inclined to go around and use that time to talk to the kids, to conference with the kids about what they know and what they don't know. And then day 11 is the last day of our unit. We're going to have a celebration of learning. I think whenever you finish anything with kids, it's a great idea to celebrate because they've worked hard. So you're going to give them the test, right? We promised a test. They've been warned every day what's going to be on the test. So they're having their test, and then they're going to put up their posters, and we're going to have a gallery walk. I might have some way of them giving each other appreciations. And with the poster, we're going to use the rubric. I developed the rubric with them already. So they're doing the rubric, and I've made sure that they understand what level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 looks like. And then I might include that as a self-assessment. So before I give them the assessment, let them look at the rubric and estimate where they think they are in each of the categories that you've set up. Or you can do that with the checklist as well. And then they can hand that in, and you can put your rubric attached to it so you can see where you're different. And maybe if they've given themselves all level 4s, but you gave them all level 3s, then you're going to give them feedback about what they could do to get to a level 4 another time. And then the other thing is they're handing in their diary, or you could create some kind of way to celebrate the diary. It could be that you just hand it in though, but we've already got success criteria for that. So let me stop the share. And what are your questions about anything that we just did? No, it's just like class time. You don't have any questions.
I have a question, Jackie.
Okay. All right.
So I was just wondering, like, how do you even begin to tackle planning a unit, like in terms of the curriculum documents? Because I remember in class you were saying that you can't necessarily get to all the specific expectations that are in the curriculum document. So I guess, like, how would you go in it and like pick the most important ones, and how do you know which ones are the most important?
Yeah, so I'm
plan
going to
for?
say for practicum, if I mean, I would be surprised if your ATs have given you like full details at this early stage, but they're most likely going to say to you, I want you to do the social studies unit or the science unit or the math unit, whatever they say. So they're probably going to tell you what and give you the expectations, or at least they're going to give you the overall expectations. They might say to you, I want you to teach the pulleys and gears unit. So then you go to the grade level, you go to the section on pulleys and gears, and then you're going to say to yourself, okay, so I have to teach this unit. Some teachers, and because this is really your first go at it, they may just say to you, just do a science unit or a math unit. Math units, quite honestly, very often stand on their own. There's not a lot of integration. The way it gets integrated is often when there's some graphing and when there's like measurement. Those two strands are very easy to put into other units. But lots of teachers will just do math unto itself, a unit. So you're going to do just what I did. You're going to say to yourself, okay, I'm doing pulleys and gears. So now what kinds of lessons would fit into pulleys and gears in terms of language? Well, there could be lots of procedural writing in pulleys and gears. So I'm going to look in my language expectations to see what specific expectations could line up with this unit on pulleys and gears. There's some expectations on procedural writing. So one of my lessons is they have to write out, following a guideline, maybe you've given them success criteria, they have to write out how this pulley works or how this gear works. So I've aligned literacy and science. I might say I also want to put in some visual arts, another subject that a lot of things fit into. So in visual arts, what am I going to do for pulleys and gears? I'm going to get them to design something using a pulley or a gear or both. So then because I'm getting them to design it, I'm going to go into my expectations for that grade level, visual arts expectations. And I'm going to say, oh, here's some design expectations. So I pull those design expectations out and I plug them into this unit. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Any other questions?
I have a question, Jackie.
Okay.
So if let's say you're trying to, like, you're designing the unit on pulleys and gears, and you can't meet all the specific expectations within that unit, then how do you pick those expectations within that unit? How do you like prioritize which ones are important?
Well, so when you have your own classroom, it actually will make more sense when you have your own classroom because you're going to design your whole year. You're thinking, okay, in September, I'm doing this, in October, I'm doing that. So you're actually able to plot it out and it does make a flow. And so just what I was just saying, if I'm doing pulleys and gears and I'm thinking I want to include language, so here are some obvious language connections there. Then I'm going to check off that I've done those expectations during this pulleys and gears unit. And then I might have other expectations that I'm able to accomplish in my social studies unit. So I'm going to plug those into the social studies unit. But then I have all of these extra ones that they're not really going to fit into a specific unit, but they might just be standalones. Or it could be, so in this case, the pioneers, they're going to do a diary entry. So maybe even before I get to the unit on pioneers, I could potentially teach them different forms of text. So letter writing, diary writing, emails, whatever is in the expectations. I may do a few lessons on that in preparation for the unit. Because in my long range plans, I've already determined I'm going to have them write a diary entry. So maybe that unit is going to take place in October. So in September, I do the different forms of writing. So when I get to the unit, I don't have to teach them those skills. I can just put it into my unit. Does that answer your question, Candace?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question, Jackie.
Okay, Matt.
So I just kind of wrote it down just to make sure I got it correctly, but so let me read that out. Oh wait, my screen. It says, how do we negotiate having assessments that properly check students' knowledge while also giving students the space to decide on the type of assessment that they feel most drawn to or comfortable with? So like, I enjoy allowing students the opportunity to say or to choose like, oh, I would like to do a skit or I would like to present this just in like a paper format. Based on what they're most comfortable with. But if you're looking for certain things that meet, criteria, I guess just how do you balance those two things?
Yeah, so in this unit, I probably have, I have 3 different ways of assessing them, but that's not their choice. That's my choice, right? But I could easily, so let's say the poster as an example, I've aligned my expectation of a culminating poster task. But I could probably put in there that they act it out as well, because it's not the poster. Let me just go back to the slide. So if you look here, it's actually not the poster that is the expectation. It's actually that they're doing their relationships to the land and to each other. That's the expectation. The poster is the venue for how I'm going to know what they know, right? So instead of it being just a poster, I could let them do a skit. So for that expectation, they could choose from a poster, a skit, or maybe they do a painting. that's showing, because I think if a kid did a painting or a drawing of, or they could do a mind map. So even though I've said there's 3 culminating tasks, I'm probably going to have one that's common to all, because it's a lot of work to give them a lot of choice all the time, but it's beneficial. So I may actually say, we're going to do a test, we're going to do a diary entry, and then you can choose between doing a poster, a mind map, or a skit. So you can put it in that way.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So you give them a bit of choice, but maybe like a limited number of options just so that they don't feel overwhelmed with choice. And also it's just a bit more practical on your end so that, you know, you're not struggling to assess something that was completely unexpected based on the criteria that you have.
Exactly. So if you're going to give them choice, and this is where we'll talk about it again in a minute, but you also want to be thinking in terms of your own workload. So it can be a lot of marking, et cetera, when you've got kids doing all different things. That's why I'm suggesting maybe you give them 2 things that are required and the third thing has a choice. So, you know, when we were going through this, we were talking about developing success criteria for the poster and a rubric for the poster. You're going to do that. So you're going to have the kids choose early on so that you can sit down with the group who's doing the posters. Okay, here's our success criteria. The group who's doing a skit, here's our success criteria. So you've got choice, but you do have to have different success criteria and rubrics for each of the choice ones.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, let's go back to the slides then. So when we're thinking about our units, this is really true of lessons as well. We're thinking diagnostic assessment is the for learning. So it's coming before you start the lesson because you want to know what they know so you can add or take away. The formative is as you're going through. So formative is the thing you're doing most of the time. You're doing formative every single day. And then the summative in this case are the 3 culminating tasks. So you want to be doing assessment and evaluation daily, but you don't want to take on too much because assessment can be, it can be overwhelming. So my advice might be that you're working with small groups. So let's say you've got 30 kids in your class. I'm going for the high numbers here because eventually you'll get to the higher numbers. I might put them in 5 groups of 6. And each of the 5 days of the week, I'm going to spend time with group 1 on day 1, group 2 on day 2, group 3 on day 3, so that I can sit down with them and I can do more in-depth, maybe mini conferencing, etc., in-depth discussions. So I know that they're on track. Now, if I choose as part of this unit to do activity centers, you can probably do more than 1 group at a time. But if it's a lot of independent work, I need to be really careful about how much time I'm spending. So try to come up with a way that you can touch base with every kid, but maybe your touch point with Matt is 5 minutes and Elisheva, it's 10 minutes because I know she needs a little bit of extra help there. So I just have to determine, get to know the kids. And I would say this is going to be true both practicum and when you have your own class. So when you're in there, so I don't know how much you can tell online, but certainly when you're in there tomorrow and then Tuesday, pay attention. Who are the kids who are slower to get started? Who are the kids who maybe get off track really easily? And can I go to them right away? Can I work with that child or that group of children right away so I get them on track? And then I move on to the next one. You want to have the kids tell you and show you what they're doing. So for some of those kids, if they're slower to be able to write things down or it takes them longer to read, I'd be inclined to have them tell you things because it's easier for them sometimes. But as often as you can, get them to tell you and show you. I might have some kind of anecdotal binder. So I can write down as I'm going through, and I have an example of it in a few minutes. I can write down a little comment about what the child is doing at that moment in time, and it's going to be cumulative so that when it gets to report card writing time, I have a whole bunch of anecdotal notes. And so I may have in my binder a page for each student. So these are my notes that are ongoing. But I also might be, and for practicum, your AT is probably really going to guide you on the whole assessment and evaluation thing. But I might say, okay, every day I'm going to have, I'm going to check their work. And so let's say, for example, I really make use of the RAND chart. So my expectation is that every day they fill in 2 to 3 entries on their RAND chart. Well, that might be something that I can mark out of 10. I may give them 10 marks for each day that they're filling in their RAND chart. So at the end of this unit, they have a mark out of 10. Then I might say, okay, the test is going to be worth 20. So they write the test, it's got 20 questions, or however you just design the test, then that's their mark out of 20. And then I might give a mark out of 30 for the diary entry. So we've got the success criteria laid out. I've got the rubric. And if you remember when you did your lesson design assignment, I had the rubric level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. But I constructed it in such a way that I broke it down into a mark out of 40. So you might want to revisit that rubric to see what I did, because I can do the same with this diary entry. I could say they need to have a date and a heading and a sign off. They need to have a beginning, middle, and end. Whatever I'm teaching, whatever my expectations are, I build that into my success criteria and my rubric, and then I'm assigning a mark out of 30 for that. And then now the poster is the final thing, and I've got both literacy maybe, as well as social studies, as well as visual arts. And so I'm going to give this a mark out of 40. And it's got, again, the success criteria or the or the rubric. And then that's assigned a mark out of 40. And then I can give them the whole mark at the end. So then that mark is going to be their social studies mark. It's also going to have some elements of literacy as well as elements of the arts. So this is a way that I can break this down to figure out how I'm going to determine their summative evaluation. Every teacher does this differently, and also depending on the grade level. If you're in kindergarten, they're not doing any of this mark stuff. It's all anecdotal. So your expectations. So for example, if I'm trying to assess and evaluate this point of view expectation, I'm clearly getting them to identify things and I'm getting them to suggest. So I may create success criteria that says, yes, they have identified. The identifications are present, they're not present, or they're close. And so then if they're close and if they're not present, I'm going to talk to them or give them written feedback to get them to a present stage. But it could also be just that's a check mark. Yes, it's present. No, it's not. Or a yes or no. Now the suggestions, though, I want them to suggest how the text might change if it was a different point of view, is a little bit more complex. So I may use a rubric here. It may be a very short little rubric, but I may have more choices. They have no suggestions. They have some suggestions. They have a few suggestions, or they have in-depth suggestions. And so right there, you can see how I've set up a rubric. It's not in-depth, but it's helping me to look at, are they meeting that expectation? And then an example of an anecdotal comment that goes with that point of view expectation. It might be, in discussion, student A talked about different points of view. Spelling mistake, sorry, talked about different points of view, but could not identify it in written text. They must inform your expectations. So whatever the expectations are, my information here is that I am telling them what their next steps are. And then I put there for you as well an article that just came out by John Hattie that's actually a really interesting article. Okay, questions? It's a little hard when you don't really know what you're doing, to be honest. It's much easier when you know what you're doing. Like I'm teaching social studies or I'm teaching science. And in the beginning, teachers are very understanding, associate teachers. They really do let you know what the expectations they want you to cover. So yeah. Was that helpful? Do you need more information?